Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Well, guys, the deeper you study mythology, the more you'll see that myths all around the world are completely intertwined. It doesn't really matter where we are, whether we're over here in the Appalachian Mountains or whether we're in Ireland or Scotland. We have the same myths in so many ways. Slight variations. We encounter the same creatures too and beings, which is just fascinating. And so, what does that tell you? If we have the same experiences, if we have the same mythologies, we've talked about the flood myths in the past many times, and there are so many prophecies as well. Well, we're going to focus here on the Nunnehi, and the Nunnehi are one type of fairy folk, quote unquote, of the American Southeast. So they are the principal fairy folk of the American Southeast. They're helpful spirit warriors who dwell in rocks and hills. They prefer to live on tops of mountains and hills, like the Down She of Ireland, or the fairy folk of Ireland and many other old world fae. They are said to enjoy dancing and music. It is said that the closer one came to singing Nunnehi, the farther away they seemed to be. They were able to become invisible at will, but when they permitted themselves to be seen, they looked exactly like other Native Americans. They wore traditional Cherokee clothing and spoke the Cherokee language in the Overhill, i.e., Tennessee dialect. The Cherokee name for these beings can be rendered Nunnehi, Nunvehi, or Gunnehi. Whatever the form, the name means the people who live anywhere. Although Nunnehi is a Cherokee word, the Creeks had similar legends of these beings, said to have inhabited the Ocmulgee Indian Mountains in Indian Mounds in Macon, Georgia. In Revolutionary times, the Creeks still claimed that when forced to encamp there, they heard at dawn the sound of Indians singing and dancing, as if going down to the river to purify themselves, and then returned to the old townhouses. And this is such a parallel. So the Creek also describe an ancient battle in which the warriors emerged from a mound and defeated a Cherokee war party, an exact parallel to similar legends told by the Cherokees themselves about the Nunnehi who lived beneath Nikwasi Mound near Franklin, North Carolina. And so in the Cherokee legends, the Nunnehi came out and helped the Cherokee time and time again in battle. And they're generally quite hospitable to mortals, especially those who are in trouble. There are a number of stories about the Nunnehi helping lost travelers and returning them safely to their homes. In 1838, it is said the Nunnehi invited members of the Cherokee Nation to retreat to their domain at Pilot Knob, North Carolina, and thus escape forcible deportation to Oklahoma. Other Nunnehi are said to have migrated to Oklahoma as a sort of vanguard for humans forced to walk the Trail of Tears. And it's interesting because actually, like with my background, I know there's Native American in there. And I know on my father's side, his grandmother was born on an Indian reservation in Oklahoma back just after the Trail of Tears. So always, as far back as I could go, I always suspected it was probably Cherokee, although we didn't know for sure. But these legends, they're universal, and there's so many commonalities we see with the Celts as well, and then even going into Central America with the Aztecs, with many other indigenous people. These legends are all over the place, and as we've came here and started talking to locals and getting, to hear stories from friends, etc. These things are still very, very alive, and interaction with these beings is still going on a daily basis in many ways. And so it's just fascinating stuff. And so this gets into the Nunnehi again, and as it says, they're a happy bunch who love music and dance, just like the Irish legends again of the fae, the fairy folk. And it's not just even in Ireland. It's also all throughout Eastern Europe as well. Again, the fae, and there are beings out there like this in legends in every single culture on the planet. And so, as it says here, these look just like normal Cherokee people, but could disappear at will. And it's interesting that their name is actually translated as the people who live anywhere. Perhaps because they lived in strange places, underground, inside mountains, and under streams. To the Cherokee, they are immortals, or people who live forever. The singular is Nunnehi. These immortals live in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia, near the traditional lands of the Cherokee Nation. And one tale tells of a circular depression, which the people said was a townhouse of the Nunnehi. Cherokee townhouses were public buildings that were circular, as you can see down here, covered with bark, with benches inside. This townhouse and the people who lived in it were apparently invisible and intangible. People would toss debris inside the depression, and when they returned, the floor would be cleaned up again. After white settlers arrived, things tossed inside remained there. The Cherokees say the Nunnehi abandoned their townhouse because they were annoyed with the white people. You know, perhaps the indifference to nature that the Europeans brought in so many ways. Not that all were that way. And so it's the same thing with these legends too, because there are legends of, you know, the white people having positive encounters with them. It depends on the individual. So it really is, again, a matter of vibration and where you're at, and where your love is for nature and for other beings, the respect for other beings as well. Other places where these supernatural people lived were the hills, the mounds, and the mountains of the area, especially high mountain peaks with few trees on top. It was said that the Nunnehi had large townhouses at Pilot Knob, near the Nigwasi Mound in North Carolina, and under Blood Mountain in Georgia. They could not be found if they didn't want to be found, for they were normally invisible. If you followed the sound of their music, it would change and appear to be coming from another direction as soon as it seemed that you were getting close. However, the Nunnehi were very friendly and helpful people, and they came out when needed. They often helped lost travelers, bringing them into the Nunnehi townhouses to care for them and then taking them back to their homes. One story tells of 4 women who came to a dance at Notley Town. They left around midnight. Some of the men from the town watched these women and saw them head down the trail to the river. When the women reached the water, they disappeared. When the people of the town knew, then the people of the town knew they had been visited by Nunnehi women. And so, you know, when we hear of other legends, like I was speaking of Telos, and I'm not sure how many of you people know Telos, but Telos is, again, it's an underground city, and it's inhabited supposedly by Lemurians. And so these are supposedly basically humans, and they're inhabiting a city that is kind of on a higher vibratory frequency. And so, you know, this right here is Mount Shasta Light Publishing, and Mount Shasta is where this city is. It's inside there. And so this is all about Adama, and these are channelings from a lady that is known as Aurelia Louise Jones, and it's Ascended Master channelings. And so it's fascinating because this is just one example. There's tons and tons and tons of examples of this. And of these legends of beings that live inside the earth. And, you know, there's legends, again, from the Hopi, and I'm going to do a full video on it, about the ant people. You know, because the ant people saved them, you know, and took them down into the earth. And there was such destruction going on top of the earth that really hardly anything survived. And very much perhaps like what we're going to be facing in many ways, with the earth changes. And so then when things were safe, the ant people led them back up and out. And many people think that the ant people look like ETs, like praying mantis extraterrestrials that we've heard described by people multiple times, many times. And so, you know, basically we know there's DUMBs underneath the ground. There's deep underground military bases. There's all these, you know, stories. And, you know, some people that have come forward to say, some whistleblowers saying these are not stories of the government being involved with certain ETs underneath the ground, that there's ETs living in the ground, some good, some bad, some in between, including Dracos, which are obviously not good in most cases, perhaps not every case, Greys, and other types of extraterrestrial races, as well as humanoid races living in cities within the Earth. And so this is fascinating because it gets you wondering, is this a multidimensional thing? Or is this really just cases of beings that live inside the Earth all the time, coming up to the surface occasionally? And so it's one of those things that we have to discern for ourselves. But these stories really are universal. And of course, they are more common around mountainous ranges, which perhaps, there's more natural caves and tunnels and dwelling spaces in a mountainous range. So the Nunnehi were protectors of the Cherokee. There are also stories of the Nunnehi helping Cherokee when attacked. Nikwasi Mound was said to be the site of one such battle. An unknown tribe had invaded from the southeast. None could stand against them. When the warriors came to Nikwasi at the head of Little Tennessee River, the people were forced to retreat. The people of the settlement thought they were lost when a stranger appeared among them, saying he would defeat the invaders for them. Then many warriors started coming from the side of the mound to attack the invaders. The people knew this meant they were being aided by the Nunnehi. The Nunnehi became invisible when they fought. The invading warriors retreated, but most of them were killed. When there were only a few left, the Nunnehi chief spared them, telling them they deserved their punishment for attacking a peaceful people. He told the remaining warriors to take this story back to their tribe. Another story tells of an old man who was attacked while chopping wood. He was alone since the rest of his people had left for a hunt or a dance. He ran back to his house to get a weapon. When he came out, he was surprised to see a band of warriors who had come to help him. They fought off the attackers, but soon disappeared as the old man went to thank them. And so, again, now, is this leftovers, like in the case of Adama, of Lemuria? These are the survivors of the Lemurian cataclysm. And they went basically underground to survive the cataclysm. And they're still there. They're still down there living inside the earth because that's what they've adapted to. And also because we are too violent on the surface of the earth that they don't really want to come out and be out there amongst us because of what we have going on the planet with all the constant warfare. And so, an advanced civilization might look at us like we are nothing but kind of brutes and barbaric. And yeah, in many cases, they are truly right. That's the society that we have. But not all people are like that. And so, in these cases, they come to the aid of people that are good and more pure of heart. The Cherokee people on the Valley River and on Hiawassee hear Nunnehi voices calling to them to warn them that a bad time was coming. This was before their forced removal to Oklahoma in 1838, which became known as the Trail of Tears. The Nunnehi invited some of the Cherokee to come live with them in their mountain home near Pilot Knob, North Carolina. However, before the Cherokee could enter the home of the Immortals, they were required to fast for 7 days and make no loud sounds. The people decided to trust the voices of the Nunnehi because they had always been helpful for them. So they fasted as requested, then were taken inside the mountain to live. Fascinating stuff. In another village, the Cherokee people had come together in the townhouses to fast, and on the seventh day, and there's a seventh day reference, the numerology comes through from everywhere, and it's usually very similar, if not the same. So you have to look for universal truths. So there's so many things about creation myths with 7 days. And obviously we have 7 days in a week. But why do we have 7 days in a week? Why not 5? Why not 3? Why not 4? Why not 10? We have to look deeper into all these things and the numerology behind them. So the Nunnehi took the people of another village to live with them under the waters of a river. The Cherokees said that after that, you could hear the people talking under the river on a warm summer day. And the Cherokee people who choose not to go with the Nunnehi were later forced to leave their lands and to move to Oklahoma, along with a few other tribes. It is said that some of the Nunnehi went to Oklahoma to continue to watch over the Cherokee people. The Cherokee who went to Oklahoma said that one of their biggest regrets was leaving their relatives who had joined the Nunnehi in their homelands. These tales are fantastic and pleasant to read because they're generally stories of positive outcomes. It would be nice to believe there really were some immortals that help people. Perhaps if you found yourself wandering in the mountains where the Cherokee once dwelt, you could hear them still playing music and dancing with the relatives of those who walked the Trail of Tears. So, it's just beautiful, fascinating stuff. And, some might look at them as being angels, right? I mean, they're very, very similar legends to what we hear in the Bible about angels coming to visit and to protect. You remember when the angels came and warned Lot, and they looked just like human, and they told him to go. And boom, because it seemed like Sodom and Gomorrah were going to be nuked, basically, and some people think they were nuked. Some people think there's evidence that that was actually some sort of nuclear attack at Sodom and Gomorrah. But either way, these legends are eerily similar when you look at it. And so some could view these beings as being, kind of like angels coming. And of course, many will view anything outside of their particular tradition as, whether it's positive or negative, as being all demons, which is really being extremely short-sighted and just fear-based. Because when we start looking at the commonality here, it's all over. And it's amazing because sometimes you'll even find the same words in totally different places. And that's fascinating. It goes back deep into our history that has been purposely hidden. And so, as this says, this is legendary Native American figures, the Nunnehi, and gets into some of their stories. There's some links here as well. It's just fascinating stuff, and there's many legends on it. And there's also legends of the little people as well. So you had these, and then we also have exactly the same legends as what we see in the Celtic mythologies of Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales, the fairy folk that are just like gnomes. And so they're definitely distinctive classes. And yet these stories, if you're reading them, they're exactly the same thing. Exactly. And in fact, in the Cherokee world, there's all sorts of beings. And we find references to the same giants that we hear of in the Book of Enoch. Just such a brief reference to them really in the Bible in comparison to some of the other sources. But yeah, these giant races, they're here in the Cherokee legends as well as things that look like gnomes, things that appear to be like elves, as well as things that are more goblin and troll-like as well. All sorts of different beings. And it's not just one particular tribe or race or religion or group of people. These things are universal. These beings are universal. And when we look at it, who stopped seeing them? When did they disappear from our modern mythos, and no longer were around? Well, you know what? I've talked to so many different people about these things, and as I've shared with you guys in the past, I did paranormal research for a few years with a whole group that was all basically all military, and it disbanded. When it disbanded, it was because they were being shipped overseas. For the most part, we're losing a lot of our people, so we just broke down the group and stopped. But we did a lot of investigations, experienced a lot of things. We got amazing voice recordings. I was actually in a bathroom one time in a restaurant after hours that was haunted, and people would feel something in the bathroom, in the men's room. And so I had a camcorder with me, and I was taking voice recordings. And I could feel, I was staring into the mirror and I had the lights out, and I could feel that somebody was behind me. So I just, said to it, I feel you. Is there anybody here? And I didn't hear anything audibly. And then I said, where are you? And I didn't hear anything audibly. And I said, what is your name? And I didn't hear anything audibly. But when we played it back, it answered me each time. And it said that, when I asked, where are you? It said, I'm by the door. And asked him his name, and his name was Paul. Just like that, he answered. Now, that was probably a leftover human spirit, or what we would call in Taoist Chinese medicine tradition, a Po. And so out of the Chinese Taoist traditions, humans are actually we're composite beings. And we are basically a Yuan Shen, which is like the soul, the higher spirit source that comes from God and that's eternal. We're composed of 3 Han, which are, you could view them as 3 good angels kind of on your shoulder, and 7 Po spirits, which are 7 spirits of the earth. And so when a human dies, according to this Taoist philosophy, the 7 Po spirits are absorbed back into the earth, because that's what they came from. The 3 Han spirits can go up, because they're heavenly. They can go up and either be basically guides for you in your next incarnation, or you might end up being a guide for one of them in their next incarnation. Or they could go on and just be guides for somebody else, or choose to do something totally different. It's totally whatever they want to do. And the Yuan Shen is the real you. That's the one playing the game, basically, and that's the eternal part. That's the eternal soul. So human earthbound spirits that we encounter in the Taoist tradition are typically Po spirits. And so they're kind of a shell of the human that was there before. But they maintain a lot of the characteristics of the human, and they just choose to not be reabsorbed back into the earth. And so they could keep themselves alive by basically taking energy from other beings that are living, and it'll keep them going. And so that is the case for a lot of earthbound spirits. Sometimes there's other beings, that just simply something traumatic's happened or what have you, and they choose not to basically go through another cycle, and they're just sort of trapped, and they just stay earthbound, and there's no real time on that side. So it's a different existence altogether. And so I'm digressing a little bit there, but I want to show you guys from all the traditions, because I've studied every world myth that I could get my hands on. Still in the process of studying deeper and reminding myself of some. We encounter all sorts of crazy beings, and some of them bear a lot of resemblance to some of what we see in the ET world. And some of them bear resemblance, like this Native American here. This is from the Cherokee, and it's not a stretch to turn this into a Sumerian relief, or an Assyrian one. And then also very, very similar to what we see in Central America. So there's a universality going on with these legends and these encounters with these beings. And what I was going to get to before was the fact that who made a prohibition on anything to do with these beings? Who basically made it so that you are crazy if you see or have any encounters with spirits, with quote-unquote fairy folk, with whatever these things are? Who put that fear into you? Where does that fear come from? Well, obviously it's the powers that be, and these powers that be trace back at least to the origins of the Catholic Church and Constantine, and actually way before that as well. So there are these entities, these beings, these humanoid beings that want to keep you in the dark about this, don't want you exploring anything to do with other dimensions, or getting a clue that there are beings on other dimensions all around us all the time. And then also these, unfortunately, these people have really accentuated the violence in our culture and spread that violence, as we see, as they've come over here into North America and conquered the people that were living by the millions, in this continent. And yes, I mean, there was fighting among Native American tribes, so it's not like, it was complete bliss here, although there was most definitely more respect for the earth among the Native American tribes than there was, for the Europeans that came over. And, I've had my DNA done, and, I have mostly European blood, so it's my own genetic ancestors that have done this. So, I'm talking about myself as well as any others out there. It's just the culture that has come over. And we've seen it go into the Western industrialized civilization where, it's spread into a corporate world, that basically doesn't care about nature, doesn't care about, there's no respect for any other beings there, whether they're animal, whether they're plants, whether they're mineral. And, it just has created this society which is so dysfunctional. And this world that we find ourselves in now, which is going to be cleansed and purified, and it's in the process of that. And that's part of what has to happen, because this, society is so out of harmony with nature that's all around it. And it's really destroying the planet on so many different levels. And so everything is alive, everything is conscious, everything. I was thinking the other day, there really truly is no such thing as an inanimate object. Every object you look at ultimately is made up of, protons, neutrons, and electrons, and it's all moving. It's all moving, it's all vibrating. Even what feels solid in your hand is mostly just vacuum. So that's part of the bigger picture here. And a part of the bigger picture is we need to get back in balance and harmony. And so the earth is a living being, and if you're treating the earth as if you are a virus, then the earth's body is going to react as if you are a virus. If you are part of the beneficial microbiome, and we've talked about this many times in videos, part of the helpful, beneficial microflora, I should say, that actually keeps the body in balance and harmony, then all's going to be well. And there won't be these earth, gigantic earth changes, because everything is consciousness, and the planet as a whole is a reflection of what's going on inside each and every one of us and all the creatures that live on that. And the indigenous people knew this and understood this. And those that have controlled everything didn't want all of us understanding that. They didn't want all of us slipping out of their hands and being uncontrollable. So they did their best to make us like them and basically rape, pillage, and plunder the planet, until we're at the point now where we're facing, destruction on a massive level. And so we need to recognize our part in all this, and we need to get back into harmony and balance and living in a symbiotic relationship with all that's around us. And we can't do that out of fear. It has to be done out of compassion and love. Fear will never take us to that place. Never. So if your whole mindset, if your whole belief system is fear-based, it's really impossible for you to act out of a love-based reality. Because the opposite of fear is love. And the opposite of love is fear. So we need to each recognize, are we living out of a fear-based mindset? It's one thing to be recognizing the dangers and the challenges all around us. But if your whole concept of the universe is one of fear, I better do this, otherwise I'm going to be punished for eternity, then, you're contributing to it. And that's something that's hard for us to get past, because we've had such deep conditioning that has gone into us since childhood. And so we must learn discernment, and we must choose to push away the negative, and we must choose to accentuate the positive, and we must choose to actually help each other and lift each other up instead of pointing out each other's faults to each other. So if you're in a conflict with somebody, and it escalates and they're yelling and swearing at you, perhaps it's better to walk away. Perhaps it's better to not inflame it anymore. However you do it, whether it's just simply saying, I'm so sorry that you feel that way, and perhaps it's better that we don't interact right now, and then just give space and let time heal. A lot of times there's going to be relationships where they're toxic, and maybe somebody is so trapped into a particular mindset or spiraling down into a deep, dark place that it's going to be impossible for you to pick them up. Then we need to just simply maybe cut the ties and move on and not let that energy pull us down. And perhaps if it's your job and you're working in an environment that you know is just so unhealthy in many, many ways, perhaps it's time to find another way to pay the bills. There's always these choices we have to make. And so when we look at these similar mythologies all across the world, all these different cultures, there are universal truths, that come out to us. And generally they're pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And it boils down to, some truths like do unto others as you would have others do unto you. But if there's anything negative in that, don't do it at all. Only the positive. You have to accentuate the positive, because what we're heading into is a time of unity and unity consciousness and getting past all the little things that, for the most part, have been orchestrated, manipulated, and purposely inflamed in order to keep us divided so that we could be useful resources for certain people, for certain entities. And so it's imperative that we recognize the divinity in the other. And that's why I say that word namaste, because that's what it actually means. Namaste means I recognize the divinity in me recognizes the divinity in you. And as it says in the Taoist tradition, we are composite beings. We have both the light and the dark in us. And as the Native American legends talk about, it's the legends of the two wolves, the good wolf and the bad wolf. Which are you going to feed? Each choice is up to the individual. So my friends, as always, please thumbs up to support the channel, subscribe and share with as many people as you can. Double check to make sure you are subscribed, and make sure you hit the bell for all the notifications. May you guys always be blessed with abundant peace, love, happiness, and well-being. And may you actually be always known as the peacemakers, and because that is our job. Those that are listening to me now, you know that you came here for a purpose. You know you're part of the peacemakers. You're part of that group that is going to help us get from this darker time that we've been in into the time that has been foretold of peace, unity, true brotherhood and sisterhood and oneness. So we will transcend all this, and the earth will calm down again for those that will hold peace and love in their heart and compassion for others. God bless, my friends, and namaste.